Good evening. I would like to call to order the Tuesday, February 21st meeting of the Wilson School Board. Roll call, please.
Mr. Case,
Here.
Mr. Hart, Mrs. Casper,
Here.
Dr. Kennedy,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Mr. McCray,
Here.
Mr. Negrini,
Here.
Mr. Schneider,
Here.
Mrs. Cocker.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
Please stand for the posting of the colors by the JROTC.
Present arms. Order arms. Reverse colors. March. Right face. Forward march.
Before our first communications this evening, Dr. Trickett, I believe you have an introduction.
Yes. First of all, welcome to our students over here to our right, and welcome to Mr. David Bonilla Garcia, who is the Director of Bands, newly appointed, relatively new here, for the school year here at Wilson High School. Before I do an official welcome, I hear that we might be treated to some music. Yes. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Bonilla Garcia.
So first to, I guess, clarify why we're playing today. Number one, thank you for continuing to support the arts here at Wilson. And secondly, the instruments that you have in front of you here are the new instruments that were newly acquired from the Cadets Drum and Bugle Corps over the past month. We've been working really hard to get new instruments in the hands of these students, as many of our marching instruments were out of quite disrepair. So we thought as a big thank you to play something for you today. So please enjoy Cadillac of the Skies by John Williams. So as you can see, all the members here are part of our marching band, and we will lead off to the next thing that addresses our marching band itself. You guys can sit down. I mean, you can stand for the whole thing, but please sit down. So part of what we're trying to do, or at least my job, I think my job is to continue the greatness of what's going on here at Wilson, and kind of take it to a new level, new spin, kind of interpret what we're trying to do here. So I'd like to kind of walk you through what our process was when we first began talking about new uniforms. I was very thankful to speak with Dave Cooper, my predecessor, about what this entailed, and I think he was very kind enough to say, hey, this is your job now. Instead of actually getting new uniforms, he waited until I was selected to be the new band director to say, hey, this is something that we would like you to interpret, how you can bring together the ideas of tradition and innovation into a uniform. So I'll get to you in a second, Zane. You can chill out. But I kind of want to talk about how long this has taken. So the timeline that we had talked about, and I know Dr. Trickett had emphasized all the time about how long this takes. We've been working since I got hired in about April and May, saying like, okay, well, we're going to have to do this. This is something that we're going to have to take a big step towards. And we started our initial design in September, working with multiple design companies, Stanbury Incorporated, FJM, and including other groups like DeMolin and McCormick's. We were browsing our different options and trying to find what we wanted to do as, an identity for our band. We got our first concept art from Stanbury and FJM in around November, and this was the time where we were back and forth between each of these companies talking about what kind of thing we want the uniform to look like, the functionality of that uniform, and we'll get to that in a moment, the extensive functionality and versatility of our uniform. And then through the course of the past few months, we've gone from prototype all the way to today, which is our proposal day, and hopefully approval day. So standing in front of me, Zane, you can come on down, is our prototype for the new marching band uniform for Wilson High School. I'll walk you through each of those things. Yeah, you can stand right there, look great. And then assuming that today, obviously we pass the ability to get new uniforms, we'll be getting measurements for our students, and hopefully the shipment arrives by September. As Dr. Trickett said, this thing is a year-long process and can, in many cases, take up to 2 years. Luckily, with a lot of expertise and design knowledge, we've pushed it to about a year. And with your approval today, we're going to get them hopefully by the beginning of the marching band season and football season. So kind of looking at what our current uniform is, I found out that we were talking to our Stanbury representative who originally purchased and designed our uniforms. They're actually back from 2006. Most uniforms, their lifespan is about 10 to 12 years. We've been pushing that, and I know that there were about a 3-4 week period during the last fall where we actually did not wear the uniforms because we were still deciding whether we wanted to wear them or actually repair them enough to be worn. So a lot of them do have, unfortunately, some irreparable damage and are of a traditional wool fabric, which many of you may know does not age very well past even one smelly marching band season. We currently are not able to wear headwear, so you'll see that we actually included headwear here. And honestly, they're just out of style. The marching band and drum corps pageantry arts have changed dramatically over the past, I'd say, 5 years even, and what we're trying to do is be on the cutting edge of what a marching band's supposed to look like. So the function of our uniform is both an identity and also a function of our marching band show, our production that we put on a field. So what we designed is something that is a perfect balance, or at least we think a perfect balance of innovation and tradition. One of the things that I learned being here at Wilson is that Wilson likes to do things traditionally, and then traditionally likes to do things different. So incorporating both of those ideas, we're trying to appease, I say, all of our community. We're trying to show off what we mean as a band and our identity at football games, but at the same time, we want to be able to do something that works for our judges and adjudicators at competitions and events that we go to throughout the fall. So the original design, like I said, goes through tradition and innovation. What we're trying to go is a very contemporary look. And as you can see in front of me, it's kind of hard to tell It's actually fully modular, so it's not as crazy as an Oregon Ducks situation, but there are probably about 100 different ways that you could wear this uniform. We wanted to make sure that the emphasis was on height, so we included a 14-inch shako all the way, 14-inch plume on top of a shako, so even our most smallest members will look tall and menacing on a football field. Utilizing the obvious colors of red and white, we wanted to not challenge that by incorporating gray pants. This was actually something that we had thought, why not change things up? Because it's either black pants or white pants, and we certainly don't want our students having to deal with white pants or our parents having to clean white pants. So gray pants are the way we went. And then as you'll see, the most important part, I think, of this uniform is the interchangeable performance shirt underneath, which is this stretchable fabric. That is a full-on shirt underneath the jacket, which can be changed out every year, and we'll talk about that in a second. If you do a spin for me, Zane, we got nice, cool drop capes. Those are actually going to be, in the final design, they're going to be split down the middle, so you actually have 2 separate drop capes. And then the modularity extends all the way to the shako. The shako wrap comes off, so we can actually change out what the headwear looks like. So, as I said, modularity is key. Zane and I went for a photo shoot the other day. There's some nice pictures of the uniform. I think they look fantastic out on a football field. And then taking a look at the one where, yeah, there you go. Yeah, when you see an entire band dressed as those on a football field, it's pretty awesome. So we're really excited. We're really proud of the prototype that Stanbury was able to give us. And there are actually still a couple tweaks that we're making to this, but I kind of wanted to, see it in its natural habitat, and it looks fantastic. The performance shirt, this is the interesting part of what we're doing. A lot of marching bands these days are utilizing performance shirts solely, only performance shirts. And to me, I think that loses a little bit of identity. I used to march in a drum corps that wore the same type of uniform for 80 years straight, and as soon as they changed it, people went crazy. So what we wanted to do is incorporate the tradition of the Wilson look, but at the same time be able to change out some of what we have. So similar to a sports jersey, we'd like to kind of add a line item that every year we are able to get these very cost-effective and really, really cool-looking performance shirts, which would be changed based off of our show theme. So say we were to do a show about water, we could get a bright blue shirt that would go under the red jacket. It would look kind of cool. But in other ways, this one that you see right here is the standard one that will be replaced every 3 or so years based on the lifespan of the performance shirt. One way we wanted to incorporate the students into that cost-effective saving measure is allow the students to buy their uniform at the end of the year, specifically the performance shirt. If we sell them back to the students, allow them to take a part of what they accomplished throughout the season, they might want to continue being a part of the band. And I think that's super important for us, especially since the uniforms themselves may not be reusable from year to year. More photo shoot, saying you look great. And then talking about the whole package. So what we've got here is jacket, bibs. The bibs, we call them bibs, but they're pants. The performance shirt, the shako, which is the hat, the shako wrap, which goes around that shako, the plume, both feathers, the shoes, dinkles. The interesting thing about the shoes is, as you can see right now, we have black shoes on Zane, but we are actually going to have gray shoes. We had specific requests through the company that we purchase shoes through, Dinkles, to custom make gray shoes for all of us. One of the things that we wanted to do is also make sure that the students that did buy black shoes last year were not forced to have to buy a second pair of shoes 1 year after the other simply because we made a design choice. So I think both myself and the students would really appreciate that this be a part of that package, those shoes themselves. The raincoats that are protective in case of rain or foul weather, the garment bags, gloves, and obviously storage. So as you can see here, all added up for a total of 125 uniforms is $102,691.12. This is actually below the average for the amount of uniforms that we're purchasing. Many uniforms I would consider that you buy today can run you at a full package of around $150,000 to maybe even $200,000. So we're really proud to put on a great design and also make it extremely cost effective. So these things are supposed to last for a while, and then the modularity adds even more years to that. So we would certainly hope that you appreciated the uniform to reveal and would continue to support by approving the marching band uniforms. A huge thank you to Mike Pearson. He is our Stanbury representative. He's the one that works with us, has actually worked with Wilson for decades, even with Mr. Dave Cooper, my predecessor. He has been the one that helped us get all this uniform and get it all in a timely manner so that we can get it out to you guys today. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Just real quickly, thank you again to our students. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing on a Tuesday evening. We appreciate just the arts, music, theater. You're always here. Every time, we have a request. Appreciate you, Zane. I don't know about menacing, but I definitely agree that you look good in that uniform. And to, our staff, I mean, just coming in, the start of this school year, really, you said April, that is when you were hired, but really got on board officially, I
Yes.
guess, in the marching band season, just dedicating yourself into this. This actually came about, if I remember correctly, about 18 months ago at a school board meeting. And we were having a conversation around our current marching band uniforms. And then, like David said, we went to David Cooper, crazy how that happened, and first thing out of his mouth says, it's not the time. You have to get a new director of bands on board, and I know we met early on as a team, and you brought this to fruition. So thank you again, everybody, and just open up to the board for any questions.
Yeah.
So this is a total mom question. I'm looking at it, and I know the old wool uniforms were stinky, and the bad part was the hot games, you were dead because you were a melty mess, but that doesn't look warm enough for the cold games at the end. So can you stuff things down the shirt to really make
Zane-
it warm for the kids? Because some of those, November games get pretty
Yeah.
chilly.
No, it's a great question. Zane, what was the temperature when we went to go take our photo shoot? It was like 32 degrees. I did make sure that we actually went out when it was kind of cold to check in with him. He said it was pretty comfortable. And one of the things that you can do is you can wear a performance Under Armour underneath that stretch wear fabric, which will then kind of add more layers. But I believe what we specifically went for is the type of fabric that would be both moisture wicking in the summer, but at the same time warm enough in the winter. So it actually does end up being, if anything, a little bit warmer because of the layers.
I'm glad to see the raincoats too. I hope you don't ever have to use them, but
Yeah, no, that's important.
What is your anticipated lifespan? I know you said typically it's 10 to 12 years. Is that what you expect for these? Or
Yeah,
you
so-
said longer because of the performance shirt? Or
So each of the different there's essentially 3 different lifespans that happen. So the full-on lifespan of a uniform, how much you should expect a uniform to last, is 10 to 12 years. However, as I would probably say that 5 years ago, this design would be completely out of the ordinary, completely whack. And this is something that we are on the cutting edge of. So I would say that within 5 to 7 years, that's something that we would need to start talking about in terms of the design of what we're doing. But realistically, the uniform is built to last up 10 to 12 years. But it is actually a lifetime guarantee through Stanbury, which they will be able to replace any part of this uniform for the life of the time that we use it. Then the performance shirt itself, the standard one, the red one that you see here, we are going to be using each year for traditional things like parades and events that would require the traditional Wilson colors. Those have a lifespan of 2 to 3 years, and these are all machine washable. So these are definitely able to be taken care of. And then the individual yearly show shirts, so we would essentially buy the thematic version of it. Those would be a 1-year, obviously, lifespan. But then again, like we said, being able to sell those back to the students.
And just out of curiosity, what's the differentiation for the drum major?
The drum major will have white pants,
White pants. Okay.
so you got to watch for your step in there.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I really like the modular nature and that you have that ability to change. I think that's really neat. So thank you for taking the
course.
time to do all this.
No, I appreciate it. Hey, Zane, do you want to, we can just show the, what's underneath? So you can essentially wear it like this in a hot weather situation. So in August, when it's 90 degrees at a football game, that's, I'd say, pretty presentable. I really enjoy that we can have an identity, but at the same time, still be comfortable. So I'll hold this.
Mr. Negrini?
I like the term tradition with innovation. There certainly is a rich tradition in the Wilson School District with the marching band program. We heard from a number of former Wilson students that participated in the marching band in the 70s that wanted to honor the marching band leader, teacher here in this school district. We've kind of put that on hold for a little while as we've been working towards our auditorium renovation project. But nonetheless, there was a period of time in the 70s that many folks that are perhaps performing in the band now have family members that, these were bands that were nationally recognized. And I think it's important that this district and this board over the last couple of years have been obviously supportive of our arts and music program. Sometimes there can be criticism as far as what is or is not considered to be a priority with our extracurriculars, and I think this board has done some concerted efforts to support our arts and music program. I think this is an excellent example of demonstrating that support so that we can continue this rich tradition that Wilson has with our marching band program and spur interest in the kids that are currently in middle school and elementary school to see these wonderful new uniforms and the performances that are put on at our football games. So I look forward to seeing you guys in action in the new digs. So.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, I just want to thank Mr. Dave Cooper for lending you this opportunity, but also for you, Mr. Bonilla Garcia, for turning it around so quickly and with such purpose and making sure that, I'm sorry. It's okay. Making sure that it is good for now and will take us into the future. So
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And as the band is cleaning their area and removing their instruments, just pointing out to the board, the silver instruments, if you notice that the students have gloves on, because they are new, and we don't want them to get all marked up. And they sounded as beautiful as they look. So thank you all very much. We do have one public participation on an agenda item. Mr. Maravich, do we?
Yeah, I guess the other thing was Chris asked about, there's one less, in case anybody has the agenda from a couple days ago or when it was posted originally, there's one less item under 10. So those have been consolidated. There's one less item there to vote on that's been removed. But there's no reason for the board to vote on changing the agenda when you're just removing something.
Thank you.
And then I can handle public participation.
Okay.
Rules of public participation pursuant to Sunshine Law, Robert's Rules and Board Policy. Individuals attending a meeting are expected to conduct themselves in a responsible and respectful manner that does not disrupt the meeting. Public comment is not question and answers, but instead is an opportunity to offer comment on matters that or may come before the board. In particular, personnel and student matters may not be discussed by board members, even if the employee, parent, or student is speaking. As it relates to questions, the superintendent may assign an administrator or may himself directly speak to the speaker after the meeting to attempt to answer those questions. But the board respectfully requests that the comments be directed to the board as a body, as it's the board that will need to consider and vote on future matters. Clapping, calling out, and cheering is not permitted, nor are conversations in the audience. Individuals should not approach the board tables. It is 3 minutes. I will give a 1-minute warning. Any persons making threats of violence may be removed from the meeting or be cited by local police. And this is outlined in Board Policy 903, which is on Board Docs, which is on the website.
Thank you, Ms. Maravich. Tonight we have Megan Kramer, marching band uniforms.
Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Kramer, and I'm a junior heavily involved in the music program at the high school, including being the front ensemble section leader in the Wilson Marching Band and indoor percussion program. When I first joined the marching band in 2019, I was so excited by the idea of finally having my own band uniform that I never noticed the tarnishing buttons on the jackets and the pants that were threatening to fall apart with every piece of intense choreography that we added, and I never realized the countless hours of work our parents put into sewing uniforms to make sure they lasted another season. However, after being not only exposed to Wilson, but the music community at large, it is getting harder to ignore our pressing need for new uniforms. When my friends and I travel across Pennsylvania to various festivals, we see the new uniforms from Hempfield, Boyertown, Warwick, Governor Mifflin, and more, and feel out of place with our uniforms that are now older than most of the members of our marching band. As we are settling into the change that is happening in our music program this year, this is another change that is necessary for the marching band as we continue to push boundaries and change the face of high school marching bands in our area. The uniform design that our staff has come up with matches not only the creativity of our present members and staff, but the versatility that will be crucial as we move into a new era of the marching arts. I don't know if any of you have gotten to spend a lot of time with band kids, but I can assure you that they are some of the most kind, dedicated, and supportive kids you will ever meet. Every district wants their school to be somewhere where students never want to leave, and music students are exactly that. I personally have spent countless days where I've stayed at the school for over 13 hours and haven't wanted to leave at the end of the day. If anyone is deserving of support from the district, I think it's our music community. I am so grateful for all the support our school has given to the marching band and music department as a whole. I know how lucky we are to have these opportunities and experiences that not every school is fortunate enough to have. I hope that you are able to provide this necessary support to us once again. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have rehearsal to go to. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, Megan. The board met in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss personnel matters. Approval of minutes, 2.1, request to approve the minutes of the school board meeting held on February 6, 2023. Looking for a motion for 2.1.
So moved.
Mr. Martin, thank you. Do we have a second?
Casper.
Mrs. Casper, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Treasurer's report, Mr. McCray.
Yes, request approval of the treasurer's report, investment report, and various general and capital funds reports as presented in the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Negrini, second.
Mr. Negrini, thank you. Any discussion for 3.1? Okay, roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Payment of bills, Mr. Negrini.
Motion to approve the payment of bills from the following: general fund in the amount of $3,240,139.75. From capital reserve, $422,982.79. From the 2019 A construction fund, $3,240.85. And from the 2021 C construction fund, $32,355.84 as attached.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. We have a motion for 4.1. Do we have a second?
McCray?
Mr. McCray, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Financial reports, Mr. Negrini.
Motion to approve the financial reports for the month of January 2023, the cafeteria, childcare, and activity accounts from Southern, West, and the senior high school as attached.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. We have a motion for 5.1. Do we have a second? Dr.
McCray.
Kennedy, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Superintendent's report, Dr. Trickett.
Thank you, President Cocker. Just like to present item 6, Superintendent's Report, which is inclusive of the personnel and program recommendations within.
Thank you, Dr. Trickett. Looking for a motion to approve Superintendent's report, 6.1 through 6.6 as presented. It's okay. Mr. Martin, thank you. Do we have a second?
Schneider, second.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Abstain?
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstain.
7.1, request approval of an alternate chaperone to attend the trip to Costa Rica for about 20 Spanish 3, 4, and 5 students from March 17th to March 26th, 2023. The trip was approved on 9/19/22. The alternate chaperone is Tyler Rutt. Cost to the district will be an additional substitute teacher for 6 days. Looking for a motion for 7.1.
Schneider, so moved.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Do we have a second?
Case.
Mr. Case, thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Martin?
Just a quick question. That substitute teacher, is that the same one for all 6 days?
Yeah, ideally, that would be the case. We would always try to find the
Okay.
same person. And just an additional clarification, Mr. Rudd is going in lieu of a different chaperone. So it's not an additional chaperone, it's just that person unfortunately is no longer able to attend.
Thank you, Dr. Trickett. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Under consent items, request to accept with gratitude the following donations from Gary Collar, a check for $1,000 to be applied equally to the 5 elementary library budgets to be used at the discretion of the individual librarians for the educational benefit of their students. Looking for a motion to accept with gratitude for 8.1. Dr. Kennedy, thank you. Do we have a second?
Casper?
Mrs. Casper, thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Martin?
Gary Collar, he's been doing this for years. He was a past board member, and he's contributed so much to this district. And he's just a great guy. That's all I was going to say. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
I was
That
just
was
going to
just echo.
echo that, yes. Yeah.
Thank you,
Threes.
Mr. Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Kohler. Okay, this is a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Under Human Resources, 9.1, request permission to authorize appointment of Wilson School District Representative to the Berks County School District's Health Trust. Mr. Matthew Bender, Director of Human Resources, effective 1/18/23. 9.2, request approval to pay Wilson Virtual Academy teachers per attached. Looking for a motion to approve Human Resource Agenda items 9.1 and 9.2 as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Martin, thank you. Do we have a second?
Casper?
Mrs. Casper, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Student Services, 10.1, request approval of the 2022-23 school year calendar as presented. 10.2, request approval of a service agreement with Neurodiversity Consultants, LLC, to perform an independent educational evaluation at a fee not to exceed $3,000 in accordance with Board Policy 113.3. 10.3, request approval of resolution approving and adopting a student discipline waiver and consent agreement dated February 2nd, 2023. Looking for motion to approve Student Services items 10.1 through 10.3.
So moved. Case.
Mr. Case, thank you. Do we have a second? Dr. Kennedy, thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Negrini?
Just briefly on the calendar, I know that the staggered start is part of this year's calendar. Will there be future discussions about continuing with that staggered start throughout all of the elementary grade levels, or focusing perhaps in the future with, those kindergarten students or first grade students? I know in speaking with some parents of some of the upper level elementary students that they're not as fond of that at the beginning of the school year, finding that to be a little bit disruptive to that schedule. So just for future discussions, I'd point that out.
I just want to reply because Dr. Stout and I have had multiple discussions about this because I loathe the staggered start, but the teachers do like it, even the teachers of the upper elementary kids, and because in the past, especially, some of our class sizes have been big. Cutting a class of 25 down into thirds is much easier, but I agree, it is disruptive, and I don't think I would like it as a teacher, but the feedback from our teachers has been overwhelmingly positive about the staggered start. I love the calendar that the 2nd of January is going to be a potential snow makeup day. My only feedback is I really am not a fan of the 2/3 days. There's 4, I think, this year of the 2/3 day, which I think is down from this year. But again, feedback from friends and from parents is not at all positive on the 2/3 Wednesdays.
I would agree with that. I've heard the same.
I've heard it from teachers and parents and anyone that's in charge of getting a kid off in the middle of the day.
And students.
Of course, students, yeah. The kids are like, why?
Well, and to kind of go back to the discussion on the staggered start, so I would be interested to see what the feedback from the students is on that as well. So if the teachers and students are in agreement that it's really helpful to have that smaller group setting for the first 3 days to get acclimated, well, their first day, but for the teacher, first 3 days, to get acclimated to the classroom and the class rules and to get to know their teacher a little better. If the students and teachers all agree, I think that the parents, I mean, as somebody who has been affected by it for the last 6 years, I get it, but I think we need to just weigh that in our discussion. And one thing I would like to point out about the schedule, on the general election day in November, we are going to have a professional development day, an Act 80 day for teachers, because multiple buildings in our district are used as election polling locations. So it has in the past been, not that we had a safety concern, but you have, community members coming into our schools to vote. So I think it cuts down a lot on the, well, first of all, parking is a nightmare, but depending on where your polling location is, but it cuts down on the extra issues that, come about, so that there will be no students in the buildings on Election Day. I appreciate that. Dr. Kennedy?
I just want to circle back to our end of the board meeting conversation last time when Mrs. Cocker brought up the amount of time spent in testing and lost for testing. And if you look at this year's calendar, you'll see the entire last week of April and the whole month of May has been noted as state PSSA testing windows. So I think in a very seeable snapshot, you can see how much of our school year these PSSA tests take away from. That's a giant chunk of time. So I just wanted to point out that visual to help bring your point from last meeting home.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Any other discussion or questions for, I kind of lost where you were, Student Services?
President Cocker, if I
Yes,
could,
Dr. Schreckett.
this calendar is, it's a work in progress. I took over this kind of the responsibility of this maybe 5 years ago or so. And there are a lot of state mandates that are reflected in this calendar that is not easy for us to articulate to our community in regards to 180 days, in regards to 990 hours of seat time for children in our secondary schools. We use the Act 80 days intentionally and strategically, trying to achieve the goals we have with professional learning, trying to infuse also time for our teachers to collaborate. Our profession is one of those professions where they are scheduled pretty much from the minute they walk in the door to the minute they leave. It's just unlike, I think, a lot of other professions perhaps that are out there. So trying to infuse some of the collaboration time, committing to do a better job with that next year than we did this year. We also are trying to balance the needs of our staff, not just professional staff, because when we don't have our schools open, it affects the payroll for those other folks who are in our schools. So we're trying to balance all of that, trying to balance the needs of our kids. Most of our kids, I shouldn't say that, my own children, would say that an 11 o'clock dismissal is better than a 1 o'clock dismissal. They want, of course, they're in high school. Obviously, we work with our teachers as well. We are looking to do some things strategically this year, whereas a 2/3 day, we actually have some other contracted time, moving that strategically to kind of piggyback onto the 1 o'clock dismissal to extend that collaboration and professional learning time. But yeah, it's definitely a work in progress. The other piece that's on this calendar that's a little different is We heard from our elementary and our middle school staff around the need to have time for conferring with parents, conferences, and we tried to build in a little more time at the first wave, not the second wave, to ensure that every parent that wants to have a meaningful conversation, which we hope is all parents with their teacher, can do that. So that's important time built into this calendar that was not previously in November, and that's reflected on November 22nd.
Thank you, Dr. Trickett. Any other further discussion or questions for student services items? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Technology and Media, motion to request permission to replace district plain old telephone service, POTS, lines with UMA Internet and cellular-based phone service at a month-to-month cost of $39.95 per line for up to 40 lines. Looking for a motion for 11.1.
Schneider, so moved.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Do we have a second?
McCray.
Mr. McRae, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Operations, 12.1, request permission for an adjustment for cost inflation installation of natatorium scoreboard with just-in-time Colorado time systems, originally approved on October 17, 2022 meeting. Upon further investigation and warranty, it was deemed necessary to have a certified Colorado time systems representative do the install of the scoreboard at a cost of $4,500 and a board cost increase of $2,503 due to market availability, totaling an additional $7,008. Looking for a motion to approve 12.1.
So moved. Case?
Mr. Case, thank you. Mr. Martin, second. Any discussion?
I would just point out that there seems to be like what I would guess is a typing discrepancy, because that adds up to $7,003, not $8. Not that it's a big, I'm just saying.
Right, the $5 difference. That's a good point. Mr. Maravich, if it's a addition error?
Do we know which one it is? Is there a chance that the?
$7,003, okay.
Can we amend?
Yeah, the motion will be for 7,003.
Okay, thank you. So looking for a motion for 12.1 with a total of $7,003. Thank you for catching that, Mr. Schneider.
So moved. Case?
Mr. Case, thank you. Mr. Martin, seconds, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Finance, 13.1, request approval of the budget transfers dated January 13th, 2023 through February 15th, 2023 as attached. 13.2, request permission to create a Future Business Leaders of America, FBLA Club, and establish a student activity account in the Southern Middle School Student Activities Fund. 13.3, request permission to create a unified sports team account, student activity account in the high school student activities fund. Looking for a motion to approve items 13.1 through 13.3.
So moved, Negrini.
Mr. Negrini, thank you. Do we have a second?
Schneider?
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCray,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under childcare, 14.1, request approval of the 2023-24 tuition rates for preschool and childcare at Berkshire Heights Elementary Learning Center and school-age before and after schools childcare as attached. Looking for a motion for 14.1.
So moved, Negrini.
Mr. Negrini, thank you. Dr. Kennedy is second, thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Negrini?
As I mentioned during our last board meeting, as I was reporting on our finance meeting, this was recommended to tweak these rates upward so that essentially it put us at the same rates as all of the independently owned preschool programs in the area. The highest costs to individuals for preschool are the nationally known, I think, KinderCare, and I forget the other, yes. So ultimately, we've moved our rates up. It's a significant increase. I believe it's 11% or 12%, something, 14%. So it is a significant increase to our folks that utilize the preschool program, but we've been nudging these numbers up each and every year, and ultimately we felt as if the time was right at this point to put us on par with all of the other independently owned preschool programs. So that's why the increase is as significant as it is, and as you know, most people should be aware, it is difficult to staff those particular programs. So you know, much of the costs associated with these increases will be able to either retain or certainly recruit individuals to maintain those facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. Do we have any other comments or questions for childcare 14.1? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
No.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no.
Under extracurricular, 15.1, approval of a contract with Stanberry Uniforms, Inc. for $102,691.12 to purchase new uniforms for the high school marching band, pending solicitor approval. Looking for a motion for 15.1. Dr.
Casper?
Kennedy? Dr. Kennedy, thank you, and Mrs. Casper is a second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes, I just want to make sure in that itemized budget, there was a couple items that I think we have to be careful that when we look at these, because the shoes, I saw that, and also I would call it the undergarment. I know that the shoes are paid by the students in all their sports, so we have to make sure that that's clear, that this is a one-time exemption just because the kids bought shoes last year. That's not a reoccurring item. And also, there's I guess they call it that performance shirt. I know that the football players purchase their undergarments too, so I think it's just something to keep in mind.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any other discussion? Okay. Having a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
And thank you to Mr. Bonilla Garcia again for the presentation and for organizing this effort. Enrollment report miscellaneous. Our enrollment as of February 17th, 2023 is 6,427, which is a decrease of 2 from the previous report on January 13th, 2023. On to committee reports. BCTC and Student Services, Mrs. Casper.
Thank you, President Cocker. I have no report for either one. The BCTC meeting is tomorrow.
Great, thank you. BCIU and curriculum, Dr. Kennedy?
Yes, the BCIU met last Thursday. We heard about the annual Board President and Superintendent Workshop, which both President Cocker and Dr. Trickett were at, as well as Karen Troutman. She was instrumental in presenting with Amelia Croce about telling your story, proactive and collaborative approach to school district communications. It was very well attended, and the feedback was excellent. The BCIU also had CPR training for all of its employees who are required to have pediatric first aid and CPR and adult. And they estimate that over an average in a year, they trained about 500 employees and school district personnel. Just another reminder, I think the more people we can get out in public trained in CPR, the better. And lastly, one of the favorite things that the BCI does is they put together their state mandate booklet and state mandate checklist. The state mandate document is 82 pages. The short version checklist, I think they said, was like 19 pages. And it's been so popular, they actually give this state mandate booklet and checklist to all districts and IUs around the state. And it really is a comprehensive document that talks about required training, reporting, drills, policies, and it's very helpful for districts. And I think it's also informative for the public to be able to see all of the things we're required to do, and many of which are not paid for. Anything you want to add to that?
I was going to hit it in the.
Okay. All right, thank you. Curriculum committee meets tomorrow, 4 o'clock here.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Berks EIT, Mrs. Schlossman. Extracurricular committee, we met on the 13th. And the majority of our meeting was Mr. Bonilla-Garcia and his presentation. And clearly it was successful and it was a great presentation, so thank you. And the other piece was we also discussed our unified track and field team. So I want to thank Ms. Monica Lawrence and Andrew Bowl for stepping up and being the coaches for this new to us activity. I think it's going to be really great for both groups of students. So just as a reminder, it's a program, it's under the umbrella of Special Olympics, and it's 40% of the students that are participating are in special education, 40% are regular ed, and the remaining 20% can be whatever mix we have. And for our activities, there's track and field, that's kind of what we signed on to, but there's also bocce, right? Wasn't that one of the other districts? Bocce ball is an option, so possibly next year we will add that to our lists depending on how this activity goes. So I just want to thank the two coaches for taking this new program on. Facilities Committee, Mr. Case.
Thank you, President Cocker. We met on February 13th at 4:30 p.m. in the Operations Building. First up on the agenda was an auditorium and performing arts center presentation by Crabtree and Rohrbach. Mr. Sean Dowdy presented the current status of the high school auditorium project and the next steps and a tentative timeline. So we went through schematic design, upcoming tasks, the schedule, timeline, budget, and then fielded questions and part of just more discussion. I'm not going to talk about everything today because Crabtree is going to be here at the next board meeting to go through the entire presentation and take questions from the board. And the facilities team did a really great job with the minutes from the meeting, and all the presentations and documents are actually on the facilities committee website. So if you go there, you'll see the budget and where we are in timeline. For the March 6th meeting, the next board meeting, we're looking to have the presentation and then go through for the board and present for the design development approvals. So for the next steps, drawing development. The next on the agenda for the Facilities Committee, Mr. Matt Citroni presented issues to be addressed at both Southern Middle School and West Middle School auditoriums. The board had an overview of that as well before the board meeting today. And again, for our next board meeting, Mr. Citrone is going to have a presentation with regard to the some of the deficits that are at Southern and Wilson West auditoriums and what we're going to do to fix those things. So more to come on that, so stay tuned. The next topic was turf bids for Mack Stadium. Wilson budgets $50,000 a field currently for turf fields. and we typically get many more years than what is typically accepted, lifespan for turf fields. But the turf field for the Mac Stadium is on, is up, and we need to replace that field. So we're going out to, so Mr. Simcox presented the quotes received. The project was bid using the CoStars program, and Mr. Simcox and Mr. Kaufman will be engaging coaches and athletes to ensure that the weight and height of the turf best suits our needs for that field. All quotes received are within the capital funds budget amount for this maintenance project. So more to come, which that will be presented to the board for approval. Lower House HVAC, Mr. Simcox discussed the quotes and the work to be done at the lower house for the HVAC system. He reviewed previously received bid documents and found this CoStar's pricing to be compatible. Additional review will be done and then presented to the board for approval to move forward with this much-needed maintenance. And then also another agenda item was for the operations staff is 11 people down for folks working in the operations department. It's very challenging to keep our schools clean as they should be, and as students and parents and community members and teachers and everyone working in the buildings expects. So it's very hard to hire people, and Mr. Simcox and the team are looking through using a company, Pro Cleaning Services, to help, sort of get us through these trying times of trying to find folks to help keep our buildings clean. So more to come on that, and that is about the update. Miscellaneous southern fields and the west fields, work at the southern softball fields to make it a multipurpose field. They're completed. There's no mound at this time, but it has the ability to support a 90-foot base path, and at west, work is underway on the varsity baseball field in preparation for the upcoming season. Next meeting's April 11th at the Operations Center at 4:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Finance Committee, Mr. Negrini.
I have no report. Our next meeting is currently scheduled for March 6th, although that date is anticipated to change in large part because the governor the following day is supposed to announce a proposed budget that would be very helpful moving forward for us in our planning session. So an announcement will be made in a timely manner as to the change in date of that finance meeting. So more to come on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. Legislative, Mr. Schneider.
Yes, thank you. There was a meeting this morning at the IU that Dr. Trickett attended, and I was able to attend virtually, that went over a whole host of subjects, and mostly revolving around funding at particularly the federal and state level. You may have seen in the news that there is a fight within the legislature about raising the debt ceiling and what funding levels will go to things. As part of that debate, that was the primary piece of the federal discussion. To what both Dr. Trickett and Dr. Kennedy talked about earlier, the state and the federal government mandate a lot of us, which is, I think, partially the reflection in that school calendar. And to what Dr. Kennedy said, it is largely unfunded. So that burden falls to the local level. What the legislature is going to do with that remains to be seen, because we are officially, now that all the seats have been filled, a House divided, with Democrats in control of the lower chamber and Republicans in control of the upper chamber. They were supposed to meet for the first time today, but the last thing I read in the newspaper was they were still squabbling over who's getting what conference room. So getting anything accomplished may be a long road. And last, and possibly most important, we'll have to see, time will tell, is the fair funding lawsuit brought in the state has been decided for the plaintiffs. What that means right now is pretty much nothing, as it's going to be appealed. And this could be years out till we see any kind of any kind of change in the way school funding works. If you know anything about the appeals process, you know it can be a long, slow, arduous process. So more to come on that as we get additional word.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Human Resources, Mr. Hart.
I have no report.
Public Relations, Mrs. Troutman.
Good evening. First, I just wanted to let our community know that kindergarten registration for the 2023-2024 school year will open online on March 1st. So we will be promoting registration through all of our communications channels, so be on the lookout for that if you have an upcoming kindergartner. And we're super excited to welcome our newest class of Bulldogs to the Wilson School District this fall. We wanted to let you know that there is still time for our community to visit the current Grandview Gallery exhibit, which is in this room. This all features our AP art students' work, which is amazing. Tomorrow evening, the gallery will be open from 6 to 8 p.m., and the community is welcome to attend. I wanted to recognize a student from Wilson who every month we have somebody chosen as the West Reading Wyomissing Rotary Student of the Month. So to receive this honor, students need to be outstanding role models, active in the school and the community, and they need to be excellent students. So because she will not announce it herself, I'm excited to announce that our own student representative, Miss Danny Radosh, was selected as this month's recipient. So congratulations, Danny, and it's so great to see all of your hard work recognized. And she has a host of other great things happening in the Wilson School District that she's going to cover in her report. But I knew she wouldn't talk about that, so congrats.
Thank you, Mrs. Troutman. Education Foundation, Mr. Case.
Yes, thank you. So for the Education Foundation, I just want to announce that the Iron Chef is coming. I believe everyone knows about it, but we're going to continue to announce it until it happens. But posters with QR codes are on the doors outside in the boardroom and in the admin lobby. So there's a couple of really cool things going on with the Iron Chef competition. It's broken out into 3 teams this year, representing 5 local schools and some fantastic, outstanding chefs in the community. So Team 1 is going to be Chef Daniel of the Berkshire Country Club, and in that team also featuring Ania Weichel from Ole Valley High School and Jacob Keller from Fleetwood High School. Team 2, from our own Chef Tim of Redner's Markets, featuring Caleb Gustafsson from Wilson High School, and Elena Skull from Wilson High School. So that's Team 2. And then Team 3 is going to be Chef Mike from Adelphia Seafood, featuring Tyler Cressman from Reading High School and Zayana Miranda from Muhlenberg High School. So there's QR codes. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tickets are on sale. There's also there's general admission tickets for $20 in advance, and then there's also first taste tickets where you get in an hour early and you can beat all the crowds and have a lot of fun. Anyway, it's going to be a great time, and I highly recommend everyone getting tickets and going. You won't regret it. Second thing, spring 2023 venture grants were awarded, and the Education Foundation gave out 10 grants supporting 15 teachers and students from each building in the district. Students from each building in the district will be impacted. So the total funds given for the spring 2023 venture grants was $3,429. And then our next Education Foundation Board meeting will be Friday, March 10th at 7:30 a.m. in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Technology Committee, Mr. McCray.
Yes, we did meet, excuse me, earlier today. We started out by discussing how 80 of our existing Prometheus boards will be replaced by 80 Nextline panels. This is a process we started last summer and is continuing this summer, and will continue for a couple summers to come. These are all covered out of our capital budget. We also went through how our current time clock system is nearing the end of its life, so we're looking for replacements for those. The replacements we're looking for are actually going to be proximity readers that will read the badges that our employees use in the buildings anyway, as opposed to biometric scanners. But the feeling is, since obviously they had their badges in the building, using the badges for the system makes sense as well. We also covered that as our number of students receiving free and reduced lunch count increases. We are now at 60% reimbursement for the E-rate program, and looking to options for that. We're going to bid out some of our wireless connections and also our fiber connections between our buildings. There's also a possibility of looking to use some of those funds as we need to replace our firewalls, which are reaching the end of their useful life. So more to come on that in future reports.
Thank you, Mr. McCray.
Yep.
Student Outreach, Ms. Danny Radash.
Good evening, and thank you to Mrs. Troutman. That was really sweet. Congratulations to seniors Jada Garber and Ben Small for being selected as the finalists for the Reading Civic Theater's annual Gala Scholarship Contest, and congratulations to Cassie Ivoroni for winning first place. Congratulations to the 16 Wilson students for placing first in the Women's Club of Spring Township Annual Art Contest. Congrats to divers Maddie Wilczynski, Kate Elgin, Ali Schell, Jackson Williams, and Ephraim Murray for advancing to the District 3 Championships on February 25th, and a congratulations to Maddie and Jackson for being the 2023 CPL diving champs on the 11th. Congratulations to the Wilson academic team for being undefeated and qualifying for counties, which is on March 25th. And congrats to Leanne Johnson for winning the West Spelling Bee and Grant Campbell for winning the Southern Spelling Bee, and they will be advancing to the semifinals. So a really exciting time for Wilson. Last week, the high school competition cheer team went to nationals at Disney World, and it looked like it was a lot of fun. And Mini-thon is really soon, so about 120 of our high school students will be dancing for 12 hours to raise money for pediatric cancer, and the community hours will be from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. that Friday, March 3rd, and everyone is welcome. Really encourage that you attend and hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Congratulations. Mr. Maravich, we do have public participation on non-agenda items.
Slightly abbreviated form. Individuals attending the meeting are expected to conduct themselves in a responsible, respectful manner. Public comment is not question and answer, but instead opportunity to offer comment on matters that may come before the board. Any questions the superintendent may handle by assigning an administrator or answering the speaker's questions himself. Clapping, calling out, ensuring is not permitted, nor are conversations in the audience. Individuals may not approach tables. Individuals will make their comments from the lectern. Comments are 3 minutes, and I provide a 1-minute warning. Any person making threats may be removed from the meeting or be cited by local police. And this is in Board Policy 903, which is on the is in Board Docs on the district's website.
Thank you, Mr. Maravich. First, we have Jennifer Denny, FCS Tech and Engineering presentation.
Good evening. I had the opportunity at the last board meeting to see the presentation by Mr. Dennis and Mrs. Ham and their students on family consumer sciences and technology and engineering. And I want to thank them for the presentation and for Dr. Stout for starting to highlight those programs here at the school. I'm not exaggerating to say that when I saw it, I was in awe at what is happening in our high school. Like many people, because my children aren't in high school yet, my recollection is shop and home ec from when I was in school, and it is so far beyond that. And so after I left this meeting, I went home and told my son, who's very STEM-oriented, you are not going to believe what you're going to be able to do in high school, because, you know, he's at that age where he comes home and is like, Mom, school's boring. And what I saw here was not boring. And every person that I spoke to over the week, I said to him, do you know what our kids are doing in high school? A lot of the people I spoke with were Wilson alums. And what I found is that if their children had been in high school in the last 10 years, or if they were in education, they knew very well what was happening here at the high school. But if they were not either of those things, they had no idea. They were like me, that their recollection is whatever they experienced 10, 20, 30 years ago, and in some cases even longer than that. So I'd like to encourage Dr. Stout and Mrs. Troutman to continue to publicize this to our community, because I'm sure our community would like to hear the amazing things. I didn't know students could make fabric to make clothes they designed. I mean, I didn't think that was possible at this level, or to make terrariums or robotic hands or any of the things that are happening, and I think there's lots of people who would like to hear that. The other thing that was so amazing to me about this program was that by high school, most kids are tracked. and they never interact. And this is a program that applies no matter what path these children are going to take when they graduate. And so much of high school becomes, and so much of life becomes an us versus them based on who you interact with. And here's a circumstance where children in all walks of life, all futures, are interacting. The last thing I'd like to say is that when I was in high school, this type of program was not envisioned, partially because most of the technology didn't exist at the time. But it exists now because in the intervening time period, educators learned new skills, and they brought it into their classroom. And administrators advocated, hey, let's think outside of the box. Let's put these new ideas into play. And school boards said, let's buy the technology so that our kids can do that. And so in that time period, it went from not even being envisioned to having a state-of-the-art program that are going to have our children be ahead of most kids when they go to school or to their career. So I say to the school board and this administration, keep up the good work. And when the opportunity presents itself, be visionary. Our children's futures are only limited by how we limit them. So be visionary. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Chastity Santiago, Leadership Accountability.
Good evening, everyone. 463 days ago, I attended my first school board meeting. And during this time, I've witnessed what happens to a community when academic achievement is replaced with selected advocacy. As a community, it's our obligation to ensure student achievement and pathways to success for all students is the driving force behind all the work that this district does. I have asked the following questions in the past without receiving any answer, so I will ask again. If I'm missing something, please help me understand. What is good or useful with an assignment that would have 2 of our 10th grade boys reading stories about rape and death of young girls with sexual references, and then doing a presentation in front of a class of mostly girls? Why are Mr. Martin, Dr. Trickett, and Mr. Negrini the only ones who feel a Hispanic student was worthy of protection from racism at the hands of a teacher in this district? Every one of you had something to say at that censure meeting. Is it because it's my son? I'm confused. And why did we hear all those parents with their stories during the censure meeting about racial incidents, but the PA State School Board the PA State Safety Dashboard doesn't say a thing about any of those incidents? And why would you allow and board members applaud students being intimidated by teachers to sign a petition they didn't agree with, violating their own First Amendment rights, which is prohibited? Teachers cannot when they're conducting the education of captive audiences, cover topics or advocate viewpoints that depart from curriculum. Our taxes have increased, and what have we gotten? English, math, and science proficiency decreased by 12%, but while graduation increases 2%, mathematically that doesn't make sense. And incidents involving law enforcement increased 44%, violent incidents increased 58%, weapons incidents up 100%, drug and alcohol incidents increased 7%, property incidents increased 60%. This is coming straight from the PA dashboard. The decline in performance and increased safety issues began with the election of new members in 2017 and 2019. Data doesn't lie. Our children did not benefit from the addition of these newly elected members. And lastly, in what world is it okay for board members to advocate violence by promoting resistance in all forms? It is getting out of hand. And I've spent my entire personal and career life engaging bullies like that person who said that last week. And I promise you that I will use every ounce of moral courage against your hateful rhetoric, because it has no room in this community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Lastly, we have Tammy Keener, legislation comments at the end of the meeting. Lady Gaga.
Good evening. At the last board meeting, Mrs. Casper showed her racism once again. Unlike George Floyd tragedy, where she helped organize students and urge students to protest against the police, her silence of the death of Tyra Nichols was stunning. Per your closing statements and comments at the last board meeting, you urged students and the public to continue to resist. Wouldn't this recent tragedy qualify as an event in which to speak out and have the same conviction and dedication to change or offer resistance as a tribute to George Floyd? I'm curious as to your silence. Was it because black officers, police officers, were involved in the death? You completely turned a blind eye to this horrific tragedy. Where are your ethics? Your actions certainly speak of double standards. You are by far the most racist person on this board. You manipulate the young minds of the district with relentless activism, of which you support, and you often overreact in grandstanding fashion to promote your own beliefs or causes which have no place in this district. You're an applauding fraud. Mr. Negrini, since taking over the legislation committee, I commend you on opposing salary for school district director positions. However, this has always been a public servant job. For those of you on this board that expect to be paid, I suggest you resign so that someone that truly wants to serve our children can take those positions. While you mention the legislation that seems to work for the for elites, you failed to mention a recent ruling in the Reading paper that a judge has now ruled that the school property tax is unconstitutional, which will help the working people, the parents, and the seniors in our school district. Also, you failed to mention that there are 2 bills in the House waiting to be voted on
1 minute.
to stop cross-filing of school board members. In cross-filing, it is clearly a political move. Why not file on your own affiliation so everyone knows where you stand? I ask that you please speak of all legislation going forward and not just the ones that will help the elites. I would also bring to the board's attention a recent article in the Reading paper about a Wilson High School student selected as an advisory to Lady Gaga's Born This Way Foundation. I would suggest board members do research about Lady Gaga. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That's the end of public participation on agenda items. Is there any other business from the board? Mr. Schneider?
Yeah, I know sometimes it looks like we sit up here silent when community members come up, but often that's because this is the first time we've heard about what they've come to bring before us. And it usually requires some deeper research that administration then takes on the role to do. So for the last several weeks, we've heard about students being forced to read specific books and make presentations on them. When it was researched further by the administration, it was found that first, students had the choice to work alone or with a partner. They had a choice of 2 short story websites. They had a choice of well over 100 stories between those websites. They were told which website had traditional stories and which one had more modern stories. They were required to teach a story to the class, which they were aware of. Story in question was on the damaging effects of sexual assault, told out of empathy from the point of view of a social worker. Again, it was a choice. I would just ask that those watching and those that attend would be careful and weigh carefully what gets said before this body because of the continued attacks on public education and on our staff in general. Thoughtfulness will go a long way in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Other comments from the board? Mrs. Casper?
I just wanted to clarify that when discussing Black resistance at the last board meeting, I was simply acknowledging the National Black History Month and the national theme that was selected was Black resistance throughout history. So it wasn't my particular viewpoint. but I thought it was a very good theme for this time and the climate that we're currently in racially. I also wanted to clarify that the cross-filing for school director is to actually take away partisan politics, is to kind of come across, because we are pretty much about as local as you're going to get in terms of decision-making. The cross-filing is meant to take away any partisanship in the process.
Thank you, Mrs. Casper. Mr. Martin.
Yes, I just want to talk a little bit about the testing that came up briefly. And I'm not a fan of the PSAs, but I do believe that, testing is necessary to judge. And I know some areas are subjective, sort of reading and stuff like that, but like math and science, biology, all those things are really important to know where you're based at. So I think testing is good. I'm not a fan of, like I said, what we're currently doing. But I do think we need to, we started this conversation last week. I think we need to continue this conversation, because there is, I think Jay mentioned about, how there's grade erosion been out throughout the years. And we kind of contribute to that as a school board through our policies, because we allow retesting and things like that. That attributes more to grade inflation, I think, to some other things. But these things, I think, we have to take a look at, because when you get out in the business world or whatever world you're in, you're not going to get a second chance for some things. So I think, this should be a good conversation for future.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any other discussion or topics from the board? Dr. Kennedy?
And this is a longer conversation. I agree about the grade inflation, and historically speaking, Mr. Negrini made a great point last time. The way we got into this whole testing mania was because there was such a disparity between states, and you legitimately could not compare Mississippi and Pennsylvania. Actually, what ended up happening, if you boil it down, is states like Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, who were doing a fine job educating, we actually dumbed down closer to Mississippi, Alabama. The problem being is you're never going to be able to compare apples to apples, because the U.S. Department of Education cannot tell a state what to do. States have control over their education department. So the only thing they can do is bribe with money. If you take the Common Core standards, which are terrible, especially compared to what our standards were prior, we'll give you this X amount of money. And that's how we went from our state standards to the Common Core standards. And it's all about bribery because of state control. And I just wanted to say, historically speaking, that's where we got into this mess, was because you couldn't compare from state to state. I don't think the U.S. Department of Education should tell Pennsylvania what to do. But if they don't, they're never going to be able to compare state to state. And we really, speaking of fair funding, can't even compare district to district when we have districts that are so chronically underfunded. It's not fair to compare the resources of a Wilson and a Wyomissing compared to Reading. So I want to thank the fellow board members. I thought our conversation last week was excellent, and I think it's the kind of thing we should be doing all the time.
I agree. Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Any other discussion? from the
President
board?
Cocker, I
Yes.
have three hopefully short items here. One is just, I've mentioned this before, but sitting up here, looking at the pictures, hearing the stories, seeing our staff and our kids, it's overwhelming, really, the amount of pride I know that we all feel looking out, seeing kids perform. And I just am very thankful that our team has continued to bring kids back, and I agree 100% with some remarks from the audience today in regards to some of our teachers and students last time. The more we can do that and really showcase the great work that our kids are doing every day, I think the stronger we'll be as a leadership team and as a school board. The other piece I'd like to just reinforce is the process in regards to concerns, and I know we have parents watching as well. It's really important to create change in any system that we're going to the right people who can implement, the change. And that starts with reaching out to people that are directly involved. This group is a body to hear concerns, absolutely, and that's an important role of this board. It's an important role that I serve in my role. But we really need to make sure we're opening the dialogue with our teachers and with our principals so that they are part of the system and can provide the necessary information, in a timely manner. I read a quote or a social media post recently, and essentially what it said was that teachers create all other occupations. And I am really concerned about the state of public education. And I'm really concerned about staffing and getting highly qualified people, licensed people, to go into our profession. And I just would ask everyone to reflect on the current state of affairs in public education and the challenges we have hiring people, not just here in this district, but also across the Commonwealth. There are 6,000 students, a little less than that, I believe, graduating from Pennsylvania schools with licensure to teach in Pennsylvania, 6,000. Has dropped by over 2/3 in the last decade, which, as you know, based on simple math, when we have a third of the candidates, that creates a lot of challenges for us to require or to attract the best people. So I just kind of wanted to put that all out there as my middle chunk of my remarks. And then lastly, under the superintendent's report, I did not mention this at the time, but I'm going to mention it now. We're a big school system. We have 1,500 employees. 1,500 people work here. A lot of those folks are part-time. And we lost one of those folks last week. This person who was on the agenda only worked for us for about 8 months, but has had an incredible impact on our school, on our kids, and our community. He was a bus driver for us, had an amazing impact on me through a shared experience that we had. And I just want to publicly thank our team for caring for him. He doesn't have family in this area. And Randy and Hans and Vicky specifically, Mike, everyone on the transportation team just was really there for him. Spent a lot of time with him in the hospital and was there with him when he passed. So I just wanted to make that statement from the human side of what we do. We'll miss Jim and are thankful that we got to know him for 8 months.
Thank you, Dr. Trickett. Any other points from the board? Okay, I have one thing I would like to share. I'd like to share a story in honor of Black History Month. This is Ruby Bridges. When she was 6 years old, she became the first Black student to attend the all-white William Frantz Elementary School in New Orleans. In the same year that Ruby was born, the case Brown versus Board of Education was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled that the establishment of separate public schools for white children, which Black children were banned from attending, was unconstitutional. Schools in the South resisted this change, and it wasn't until 6 years after the decision, under significant pressure from the federal government, that the Orleans Parish School Board agreed to allow Black students into their schools if they were able to pass an entrance exam, which Ruby did. The men in this picture are U.S. Marshals. They were sent by the federal government to escort Ruby to school because the local and state officials refused to protect her. Every day, Ruby walked the 5 blocks from her home to school, where she was greeted by a mob of angry white protesters. They held signs, threw objects, and screamed racial slurs at the 6-year-old because they did not want their school integrated. On her first day of school, Ruby and her mother sat in the principal's office for their own safety as the crowd of parents followed them into the school and proceeded to remove their children from the building. Slowly over the next couple of weeks, some parents allowed their children to return to school, but only one teacher was willing to work with the first grader. So for the remainder of the year, Ruby was in a classroom by herself with her teacher, Mrs. Henry. Throughout this whole ordeal, Ruby was very brave. She walked past the crowd every morning and into the building where she worked hard and kept a positive attitude. Ruby paved the way for other Black students in her town to attend integrated schools, and she became the youngest hero of the civil rights movement. When reading through her story, my biggest takeaway was that when you look at this picture, it feels like it happened in the distant past. It's a black and white photo, and the idea that the children were barred from attending a school because of the color of their skin couldn't possibly have happened in recent memory. However, here is a current picture of Ruby Bridges. She is 68 years old. Ruby Bridges still lives in New Orleans and has written a number of books about her experience. She is a strong civil rights activist and enjoys visiting schools to spread the message of unity and kindness. Recently, groups have tried to ban books about Ruby's story from being taught and available in public schools. Many of you may have already heard about Ruby's story, but my hope is that when you think about her, you remember that this is not something that happened hundreds of years ago. Our current first graders have grandparents around the same age as Ruby is now. And I just wanted to share that story and the impact that she's had in our country. So, thank you. If there's no other business, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.